Today, GOP leaders from the Kansas legislature will be at the White House. While President Trump's effort to gerrymander his way to a new GOP congressional seat is not on the official agenda, the meeting does come only a day after the Kansas legislature approved over $400,000 to conduct a special session where it could consider new maps. Joining me now is the only Democrat in the Kansas congressional delegation, Congresswoman Sharice Davids. Thank you so much for coming in. It's nice to see you. I mean, the obvious first question is, how worried are you that Republicans will do just that, draw you out?
You know, I would say more so than being worried, I'm frustrated like a lot of Kansans are. I think there's a lot of us who are actually just like really angry about this because first of all, voters should be choosing their representatives and not the other way around. And this is absolutely cutting against that basic fundamental value that we have. And then the Republicans in Kansas have already gerrymandered the maps. You know, they did it 3 years ago, and now because Donald Trump is telling them to, they are taking on this mid-decade redistricting in an unprecedented way because, I mean, we all know that Donald Trump knows that they're not going to be able to win in the midterms unless they cheat.
You mentioned the redistricting in 2022, which was after a census, which is when generally you're supposed to redistrict.
That's
and
right.
there was gerrymandering that happened, but you still won by double digits.
Yeah, I think there's a few different reasons for that. One, I would say, and what I've been sharing with anyone and everyone, not just in the Democratic Party, but across the board, is you got to show up. You got to listen to folks and learn from them about what's impacting their day-to-day lives. And I think that people really respond to that. They want representatives who are listening to them. They definitely don't want representatives that are trying to silence their voice at the ballot box, which is exactly what the Kansas Republican legislature is attempting to do right now.
You just said a moment ago that voters should choose their elected officials, not the other way around, which is definitely
it almost seems like it doesn't need to be said.
A sentence that makes sense. However, you well know that this is a bipartisan problem, and by this I mean gerrymandering, and that in the states where Democrats have control and have the ability to gerrymander, they have done so in a pretty aggressive way. Maryland, Illinois, and beyond. So what do you say to that? I know that those states didn't do it mid-decade, but they have definitely worked the map so that the elected officials, do choose their voters.
Yeah, I have been pretty clear on this, actually, since I got to Congress and was running for Congress, that from my perspective and from, I would say, the perspective of most Kansans, that redistricting should be based on the numbers. It should be based on the census. It should be based on the needs of a community. You know, Johnson County, which is in the eastern part of the state, has different needs than folks out by the Colorado border in the western part of the state. And I have supported legislation. In fact, some of the earliest legislation I supported was, in part, would stop partisan gerrymandering. Unfortunately, that didn't go anywhere in the Senate, but I would like to see that legislation be reconsidered. And the other thing I would say is, you know, this whole thing that we're talking about right now with this mid-decade redistricting got kicked off because the president is more concerned about holding on to power by any means necessary, including silencing the voices of Kansas voters.
As you well know, in California, they're trying to sort of answer that by doing their own redistricting. Do you support them doing that, or should they not do it because of the argument you just made?
Yeah, I mean, I know that that issue is going to go before the California voters, and I wish that we weren't in this situation at all, that Donald Trump hadn't kicked this whole thing off.